Once you've completed your line drawing, there's a few steps that you need to do. First, you want to make your background layer invisible and open up your navigator. If it's not open, go to Window and choose Navigator and pop it open. And with your navigator, you can zoom in. And I usually like to start in a corner and just kind of cruise around and see if all of my shapes are clean enough. If not, I can go in with the eraser tool and clean up some edges. Turn the opacity of my eraser all the way up would help. So I can clean up my edges, and you really want to make sure that your spaces are closed. Now, these tiny spaces like right in here really aren't enough to worry about. There is a gap options that you will want to do in Illustrator that will help close down those tiny gaps. But gaps like these here in the paw really are too big. So I'll need to go in and try to match my brush size and just close off those shapes. Any shapes that are open, you will have the paint that leaks out of that area and into the next. So you'll definitely want to make sure that your shapes are defined and closed and cleaned up before you take them into Illustrator. So that looks good. Yep, I think this will work. So then the next thing that you want to do to prepare this to take it over to Illustrator is go back down to your bottom layer. I'm going to make it visible again so I can then unlock it and hit the trash can. That will delete that bottom layer, and what you should be left with is just your line drawing. At this point you can definitely touch it up. Now I'm looking at these lines again and I'm not so sure that they are going to work, so I'm going to go through and just close them. Easier to do it here than to struggle with it later in Illustrator. So the next thing you want to do is go to File, choose Save As, and I'm going to add the word only. So now I have collage line only.psd. A .psd is absolutely fine for this because we can place all kinds of files into Illustrator, and a .psd is perfect. So make sure that's at the end. And again, this is in my GDIM folder, so you save it in your GDIM folder. And I click Save. And now I'm going to minimize Photoshop. You could really close it at this point, so you could go Photoshop, quit Photoshop. And now I'm going to open up Illustrator CS6. So it should be on your dock as the AI. If it's not, go up to your searchlight and type in Illustrator. Make sure you're opening CS6, not CS5. And I want to come up to File and choose New. And here is the new document window. It looks a little bit different than Photoshop. But for our purposes, you just come down here, size, letter is perfect, and you kind of need to know whether your image is more horizontal or vertical. I think mine's kind of square, so I don't think it matters which it picks, but you can change it after you open it, but it's a good idea to take a peek and decide if you need horizontal or vertical first, and none of the others of these matter at this point. You do not set the resolution in Illustrator because it always defaults to the highest print resolution. So at least for our purposes. So you click OK. And here is Illustrator. Welcome to Illustrator. You'll see some of it looks quite a bit like Photoshop, but it's definitely different. For the workspace, you can go to Window, Workspace, and choose Essentials. And let's see, that's not what your essentials will look like. Your essentials will look something like this, but you can expand them. And I always recommend going to Window and opening up your navigator and plopping that into somewhere where you can get to it fairly easily, because we use the navigator quite a bit. I want it up here. Remember, once you get your workspace set up the way you want, you go to Window, Workspace, New Workspace, give it a name, and now that becomes, under Window, Workspace, that becomes another workspace, and I can go back into my other workspaces, and it depends on what kind of project you're doing, They do have some preset ones. The typography one's pretty good, but none of them have things just how I want them, so that's why I like to customize my own workspace. So then I've got what I want, where I want it. So now you have your document in Illustrator. This step is critical, critical, critical. Just like with your collage, right? There's other ways to get to do this, but I need you to follow and do it this way, and especially when you are bringing anything that didn't come from Illustrator into Illustrator, you need to place it. You don't open it, you don't paste it, you don't copy and drag it, you place it. So while I'm in my new, still untitled, we'll save it in just a moment, Illustrator document, I'm going to go to File, and down right smack dab in the middle, I'm going to choose Place. That is the only way to get in your Illustrator files into Photoshop. No, other way around. To get your Photoshop files into Illustrator is to place them. So now I'm going to navigate to my folder, to my collage, and I'm going to look for the one that says line only. I do not want this one with the picture still in the background, the first one. I want the line only one. Now, a good idea here is to uncheck the link button. If you leave the link button checked, then actually it only makes a hyperlink in your document and doesn't embed it there. Sometimes you'll run into problems then if the original file gets moved, your Illustrator file no longer has access to it. So uncheck link and click place. And you can have it show the preview if you want. All of this is just fine. Flatten layers to a single image. They're already flattened anyway. So click OK. And now you'll see you have your line drawing in Illustrator. With it still selected, and you'll notice you have this main selection tool. The black selection tool is the main one we're going to use for now. We'll get into the direct selection tool later. So use your black selection tool, and you can click on your image and move it around. It's one single object. To deselect it, you would click outside of it. So it's here on your artboard, which is what the paper is called in Illustrator, and you have your objects control palette up top, and you'll notice instead of like in Photoshop when we click on the different tools our control palette changes, well in Illustrator our control palette changes more based on the object that we have selected than the tool that we have selected. So you want to make sure with your selection tool that you've clicked on your line drawing, and then you'll see these options come up at the top. And what we want to do is image trace. So we come on in here, and this is a little bit different than the last one. So it looks like we just come in, and I played with this once before. So if you have a large image like I do, it tells you that it might be slow. I'm just going to hit don't show again and OK. So now it's just going to live trace it first, but I really want to have some control in there. So it's a little bit different than the way we used to do it, but first you just hit that tracing button, and then you go back into the image trace panel. And this really gives you more of your choices and selections of exactly what you're looking for. So you have presets here. Some of these, it looks like they got rid of most of the ones that used to cause us trouble. Definitely avoid anything that says sketched or drawing in it, because we find that those leave holes that you can't color later. But you can start from a preset. Something like black and white logo might work very well. And it will show you a preview as you go. So you'll notice how it treats the line quality, and different presets have different ways of smoothing out your angles, and the fidelity, which is kind of cleaning up your drawing. And so we have different modes for this one. Black and white's fine. The threshold is the balance of black pixels to white pixels. More gives you more black pixels. And you'll notice if I take a moment, and see, then it bumped up all of my black lines. Less gives you more white pixels. And so you can decide really where you want your drawing to be. And most of these, I don't think you need to mess with all of the other little settings. Really just get your threshold set, And if you aren't exactly liking the way it looks, you can click on Advanced. Paths will control how closely it fits to your original drawing. So you know, if you were a little sloppy and you really don't want it to fit, turn up Paths, and that will smooth it out. Corners, this is how sharp or round the corners are. So if you're not happy with the corners, you can say turn them down and make them more rounded. Noise is kind of pixelization, so if there's too much, you can turn it down. If you want to create some noise, some hand-done look, you can turn it up. Okay, so it looks like there's a few different options here. For our purposes, these are just fine, just setting the threshold and a few of the sliders in Advanced. Then you're going to hit Trace. And to do that, to hit Trace, to make the Trace button available, you just need to uncheck Preview and then hit Trace. Okay, so now I can close that, and my document is traced. So I just took it from being a raster graphic to a bitmap. And let me back up real quick and just show you what I'm talking about. So I'm going to go to Place again and place my line only, a second copy of it. And we will deal with the differences between these two file kinds very soon. We'll do some raster versus vector, but I want to just show you with them side by side. This is a raster graphic. You see pixels, you can see the edges. This over here, same thing, but it is a vector graphic. It is a smooth, continuous angle, which gives us a lot more flexibility for graphics and for logos and things like that. So you're not going to do that part, but I just wanted to show you. So we're going to delete the old one because now we have this beautiful, smooth, much cleaner than my line drawing vector graphic to add color to. So the next step is to get it ready for coloring. And so to do that, again, with it selected, we go into Object, Live Paint, once you are happy with your tracing result, you click the Expand button, and next you'll go into Object, Live Paint, Live Paint, Make. And this will turn your vector graphic into Live Paint groups. The very next step before we add color is to do the gap options. This is an important step because this will close down your gaps that would otherwise let the paint leak. So it's next to the Expand, or you can right click and let's see if it's under here. There's some options under here, but gap options are not here. You can go to Object, Live Paint, Gap Options, or use the little box here. You want to click on Gap Detection if it's not already on. And then what you'll see is small gaps. See, it's showing me small gaps there. You can change it to medium and take a look at how those will look. And you kind of have to decide. See, I don't want it to close off the eye there, so I'll go back to small. And everyone's are different depending on your line drawing and your line size. So I'm going to click OK. And now I want to click outside of my object to deselect it. And now I'm going to go hunting for the paint bucket. They move it every version. And so, if you click on this horrible perspective grid tool, all you have to do is stay clicked on it and click this little hide grid. Okay, so the paint bucket tool is now, the live paint bucket is underneath the shape builder tool. So I select the live paint bucket. And you can also, if you're going to use it a lot, you can grab this little end and tear it off. And then in Illustrator, I'm dealing with fill colors and stroke colors. For this, we don't really need to deal with stroke colors, so we're just going to deal with this big solid square. I can double click and get to color sliders and choose a color. I can also come up to my swatches over here, and then depending on how your tools are set up, you might have colors and swatches over here as well. So you can select your colors any way. And now, when I go with the live paint bucket into my picture, you'll see that it will outline in red everything that it's going to color. And see, I didn't have to worry about the outside edges because the live tracing process recognizes the outside edges. So then maybe I come in and change to a darker green. Okay, and you'll see now I can start to fill in my colors. Maybe I'm going to come in with a nice pickle color over here. Okay, and think about when you're doing your colors, shadows and highlights, and make it realistic or really flat and unrealistic if you want to. Notice that my shapes are definitely bounded by where I did my line drawings. So if you are really running into issues where your lines aren't working for you, let me know. There are some workarounds, but hopefully you created some interesting spaces with your line drawing that you can use. And then see, I can look here and it will not leak out of there if I wanted to, for some reason, paint his mouth green. You can also, it helps to zoom in to do this, but if you wanted to change the colors of your lines, you could zoom in and click on your lines themselves and start to change their colors, so that would be an option. And then another really fun option for this project is the gradients. And you go to the gradients, you click Window and Gradient if it's not open. And once you click on and activate this gradient slider, then that becomes your fill color. So I could come in here and do some really fun things with the gradient, maybe to give that black and white look of a panda. And you have options. You could have a radial gradient, so maybe it's more rounded. You can control the colors where they are. You can drop some out. You can drag some in from your swatches. So you could create, a multicolor panda if you wanted to as well. And you can really give the illusion of some depth and some real space with the gradients if you use them correctly. They work very well for eyes. You can, give the illusion of like a pupil. So I could come in here and switch it around. And you want to zoom in, so you make sure you're clicking on the right spot. Oh, and I just changed the... Sometimes it can be a little tricky to get to the inside of the space. I might need to zoom in even more to make sure that I'm clicking on the actual inside of the space. There we go, and not on the line itself. So you can get really some illusion of real eyes and real depth while still staying within a vector space and a vector graphic that is scalable to any dimension, from a business card all the way up to a big billboard. Okay, so there I could give some color, and pretty quickly can add some color. I hope you put some more time and thought and effort into it. I just wanted to show you kind of a quick way. And there's all different kinds of swatches as well. You can get over here and get into your swatch menus. So there's different kind of styles of, they're all colors, but they're different styles of colors. And then there's also patterns. So you could get basic or decorative or nature. So maybe I actually want to go in and there's foliage here, and I want to find a pattern that kind of gives me a leafy pattern in the background. So you could absolutely do that. The other way to get to those, you can get to them from your swatches menu, but one of the ways I like to get to them through the bottom of the Windows menu. You go under brushes, swatches, so you've got all your patterns right here. This is kind of an easy place to get to them. and all of your colors as well. So you will want to make sure that you save this, of course. You go to File, choose Save As, and I'm going to call this Color, or maybe Vector Color .ai. The format should be Illustrator, that's correct, and click Save. And then once you have added color and you're happy with your new composition, let me know and we will print them, and then you will mount your beginning collage and your final vector on paper for display in the hallway. Explore and really have fun with the colors and gradients in Illustrator. This is your introduction to Illustrator as well. So take some time and get familiar with the tools, and let me know if I can do anything to help. Thanks for watching.